Well, hello everyone. It's Just Dwayne. Let's talk some gear. Okay, like I said, my whole system fits inside the snake skins, the pythons, and so when I open it, everything's pretty much ready. The only thing that's missing is my top quilt, which I do keep in a separate dry bag, and then I can just throw it inside. But other than that, everything that I need under my tarp is really already kind of encapsulated in that one setup. And you saw it didn't take but a second. Let's talk about my choices and why I've made these choices. I do have two hammocks. I have a war bonnet blackbird, which I like, but I found that I don't like the way I end up closed up inside the blackbird. I mean, one of its strengths is that it's a great hammock, it's got a nice foot box, and it's got an integrated bug net. The downsides to that for me are that the sides come up pretty high, the hammock sides come up pretty high, and then the bug net runs up above. And here in the south, it just gets so hot. It gets hot early in the year, it stays hot later in the year, and so most of the camping that I do, you need to be able to get a breeze to come through. And the way the blackbird's sides come up, it blocks the wind from me, the breeze from coming through. Also, whenever I go winter camping, I like to have a heavier underquilt, and so when I carry the heavier underquilt, I'd like to be able to ditch the bug net because it's more weight, and if I don't need it, I don't want to carry it. And finally, as I'm going to talk about here when I start talking about my underquilt, I found that to stay nice and warm, I need my underquilt to really hug up underneath me. And the best way I've found to do that is to augment the underquilt suspension system with a couple additional shock cords that pull the underquilt up underneath me. And to do that, I really needed to have access to the structural ridge line. And so I went with in my current system, I go with the war bonnet bug net. It's about 7 ounces. It works great. It's got a half moon zipper on it, so it's very easy to get in and out of the hammock, and it opens up, wonderfully. You end up with net bug protection on all sides, but when you're inside the hammock, you have access to your whole hammock while still being inside the bug netting. And so that means I can reach underneath, I can adjust my underquilt, I can tighten up my underquilt to bring the suspension up higher, all while still being inside the bug net. And that really has worked well for me. The one issue that I do have with the bug net is that with the amount of sag that I try to put into my hammock whenever I'm actually deploying it to sleep in, I end up with some pieces of this bug net, because it's pretty large. They'll kind of drape around my face, and that really bothers me. So what I did to resolve that is I sewed in a couple of pieces of Grosgrain, roughly where the foot box is on the blackbird and where the head tie out is on the blackbird, and just attach some 3/32 shock cord to it, which I then stake out. So when I stake that out this direction, stake it out this direction, it pulls the netting away from my face so that it's more comfortable for me. And if you'd like to see that in action, then please go to my Laurel Highlands Trail trip video, and during my gear setup portion, you'll see I talk about how I staked that out. So that's really the only modification I made on that. Other than that, the way the netting goes on is you just, it opens up on the end with a piece of Velcro on either end. So you just stick your whole hammock system in through it, seal up the Velcro, and that's pretty much it. You're good to go there. Since I have the whole system integrated, I don't have to mess around with putting it on or taking it off. It's just always there. It's always the same, and that's kind of the way I like it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about my underquilt. Both my Insultech underquilt and my Jack's Better underquilt use a shock cord end suspension. And what that means is on the ends of the underquilt, there's a piece of shock cord that came with it that wraps around the ends of the gathered end hammock. And that you can adjust the tension on those, and that will pull up the underquilt tight up against you. That works generally pretty well for me. But like I said, whenever I get cold, I like to have my underquilt really pulled up next to me. So there's a couple of things that I did to make this modular the whole way through. The first thing I did was I replaced the 1/4-inch shock cord that came on my underquilt with 3/32 shock cord, and that saved me a good bit of weight. I keep it on all the time, depending on what season it is. It will depend on which underquilt I keep on. And obviously, if I have the down underquilt on, I don't install it onto the hammock until I'm ready to leave for the trip, because I don't keep my down compressed. I keep them hanging on a hanger in a closet. So, but the IX, the Insultech, you can keep it stuffed up as long as you want. So in the summertime, it just all stays together. So like I said, I replaced the 3/32 shock cord, and I tied it, I pulled it up tight and hanging over the ball. The other thing that I did was, and I copied this off the Jack's Better underquilts that I got. They come with a little Rogaine loop about, you know, 1/3 of the way down and 1/3 of the way up. So 1/3 of the way from either end. On one side, they have a little loop. And so what I did with that little, I put that little loop on my Shamu underquilt. You'll see I have one on either side. And what that lets me do is, I added a little piece of 3/32 shock cord and a little tiny carabiner. And so what I can do is, when I'm laying in the hammock, I can just reach up and I can clip that off. And generally I'll keep the foot one clipped off. And so you'll see that pulls the entire underquilt up around me. And it keeps it, you know, nice and snug up against me. And finally, the last thing I did with the underquilt, the Shamu underquilt, is I sewed in some end channels. When I got my Shamu, it didn't have any end channels. So what I did was, I just sewed, like I said, I took a piece of 1.1 ripstop nylon. I managed to find some gray, so it matches pretty well. And I sewed a channel. I ran a piece of 1/16 shock cord, which is really thin shock cord, with a toggle on each side. And so all I do is pull it tight, run the toggle down. The toggle just won't fit through the channel. And what that does is it gives me a nice tight seal on both ends. So that works out really well for me.